Muslim world and the West, a clash of cultures at a very critical time, both for the West and for the Near East with regard to Islam. Harold.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody who works in Washington knows you never trust Israelis, Israeli reporters, Israeli media. And I just want to tell you that whatever you read in your media here by Israelis who are stationed in Washington, it ain't true. Is everything? Sure, there are things which are, but my experience is I will sometimes hear the news here, and I listen, and they're talking about very serious institutions in Washington or very important this, and then they'll mention friends of mine. I know who they are and I know what they do. It's all, they just don't get it. They don't get they don't get the culture of Washington. And the result is many people here base their views on what is said in all sorts of think tanks in Washington. Most of it, I'm telling you, they write for themselves. Nobody reads it. No one cares what they do in government. Sort of like here in Israel, that think tanks do their things and the government does its things, and sometimes never the two shall meet. But anyway, what I'd like to do is I've spent, oh my God, I'm 66 years old. I've been working on the Muslim world since I'm 14. And as a nice Jewish boy, I came here at first when I was 13, and I wanted to find a way. You grow up in the United States, everybody gets along. You find a way to get along. I was going to be that nice little Jewish boy with delusions of grandeur to find a way to make peace between the Arabs and the Jews. And so I spent many years studying Arabic, Turkish, Persian, living in these countries, living, frankly, a Muslim life. Going to mosques, I could once daven, pray better than as a Muslim than as a Jew. I did not grow up religious. Till the age of 5, I didn't even know I was a Jew. And my whole goal in all of this was to find that way. And I studied. I have a Ph.D. in Islamic studies. And I really had the best of intentions. And my experiences, unfortunately, taught me that just because you as a Westerner think of things in a certain way doesn't mean the rest of the world thinks like you do. And what I'd like to do today is sort of give a summary of the existential questions facing the Muslim world and why they are in deep trouble. And if you compare it with Japan or Korea, who were devastated societies 50 years ago and far behind where the Muslim world is today, or was then, what you see is that look at what's become. Japan was destroyed, and look at it today. It's, I think, the third largest economy in the world. Korea was a medieval feudal kingdom, and it is the 10th largest economy in the world today. Look at Singapore, a British crown colony. Look at it today. Look at what it was, a drug-infested, terrible, backward place when it received independence. Look at it today. Britain had another crown colony, Aden. And look at when Britain left, and look at it today. What is the reason that look at India and look at Pakistan. India is really doing quite well. But Pakistan is a cesspool of problems. What is it? Is there something about the culture of the Muslim world that keeps them behind? And it's a painful thing to discuss, because people then will say, "Oh my, you can't criticize religion." I'm not talking about Islam. I'm talking about Islamic culture. And I want to give you some things that I've learned, maybe compare them with Japan and Korea, and we'll see why, sadly, the Muslim world seems to be mired in trouble. It's, I think, only going to get worse. It's not that Muslims by nature are stupid or it's biologically inferior. And the proof of that is that Hadassah Hospital has done a lot of DNA studies on the Muslim population in this area. And it is clear from their DNA that many of the old families are 2,000 years ago descendant of the same people as Ashkenazi Jewry is today. They are people who stayed, the people carted off to Rome, were the when we lost to the Romans, were the religious, economic, political, social, military elite. What happened to all those people that stayed? Jewish history, we didn't know. Jewish history, oh, there were difficulties, and with time they all left. Not true, because the DNA, at least on the male line, proves today that 2,000 years ago they go back to the same people. If the DNA is the same as the Jewish people, how is it that we, this Jewish people of, what are we, 14, 15 million people in the world? Look at what we contribute to the world. And find for me any type of inventions that people in the Muslim world have contributed to modern culture, to science, whatever. It's not that Muslims can't do it, because in the United States, for example, people you will find, and in Europe, Muslims who leave the Muslim world and don't live in Muslim communities in the West do just fine. But Muslims who live in the Muslim world don't. Or if they live even in communities, shall we say Muslim communities in the West, they don't contribute very much. What am I talking about contributing? I'm talking about technology, scientific advances, medical advances. If anybody watches American television, there's a doctor, they call him Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, he's a Turk. He's a Muslim and wildly successful, but not in Turkey. He's in the United States. People can do well. There are all sorts of high-tech Turkish companies in the United States, but they are not in Turkey. Turkey is magnificent at one thing, and this is a problem in Muslim culture: copying. Everybody knows what an F-16 is. The only perfect F-16 that was ever created in this world, that is built from scratch with all the parts, was done in Turkey in a factory. But they didn't invent the F-16. They can't, because their culture won't let them. But in the United States or in Europe, again, outside of Muslim communities, they're fine. So it's clearly what we're talking about is a problem of Islamic culture, not Muslims. I want to talk about some of the basic problems facing the Muslim world. And this is not a happy story. Chaya said to me in the beginning, okay, what good news are you going to give us? As one who grew up in the United States, how does everything end in stories? And they lived happily ever after. That's not the rest of the world, and sadly, it's not this story. To begin with, the first important thing, the ability to question. Western culture demands questioning. The word history in English comes from a Greek word, and this, by the way, is a pure Bernard Lewis. Most of what I'm saying, really, I learned that, shall we say, the feet of Bernard Lewis, who is, for all intents and purposes, the guy sitting next to me here. Bernard in his last years really doesn't speak. He has spoken here, before. But he doesn't speak, and in the end he was only allowing himself to be interviewed. And I'm sitting next to the only guy in the end that Bernard wanted to interview him, because Dan is one of the best interviewers around. And Bernard loved Dan, absolutely loved him. So this idea, Bernard knew about 21 languages, and one is ancient Greek, and there is this word historein. Historein, we have the word history from, and what it means is in Talmud, shakla v'talia, back and forth, argument, questioning. It is, you question back and forth, and that is the process of learning. If this, then that. If you get to that. Not allowed in the Muslim world. Here's the reason why. In the Sunni world, for the first 400 years, that is until about the 10th century, everything could be discussed. And there was back and forth and back and forth. But for political reasons, in the Sunni world, the gates, what is called of independent reasoning, critical thinking, what is so unbelievably necessary for science and inventions and making life better for human beings with the greatness of what this country here is producing. The gates of independent reasoning were closed. No more thinking allowed. All you have left in Arabic, it's qiyas, which means hekesh in Hebrew, which is analogy. I'll give you in a moment a story that happened to me. So this idea of questioning is no longer allowed. Among the Shiites, which are only 12% of the population, it's slightly different. There are three ways of dealing with logic in this world. One is, let's examine it, let's fight back and forth intellectually. We're not fighting personally. And we'll get to a conclusion. Way number two, let's call it the Yehuda Halevi approach. In Arabic, taqlid, imitation. Find a guy, find a rabbi, find a source that knows your material, knows who and what you are, and go to him and ask your questions. That is the Shiite way. I want to tell you from personal experience in Qom, which is the religious capital of Iran, and which is the most powerful Shiite country on the face of the earth. They're interested in everything. They have libraries on Jewish thought. They have libraries on Christian thought, Buddhist thought. They want to learn logic. How did people think about things? That's the Yehuda Levi approach. And then is the approach that we require in Judaism. You can find somebody that you respect and all that, but you are required yourself to use your brain to fight out, to think things through, and that's the way it is. I want to tell you a personal story. It's a sad story of my own, of how I learned this. The exact place and details you'll see why I can't say, because I do not want to get people in trouble. My wife and I do not have children. It's not that we didn't want to have children. It's that my wife was pregnant twice and miscarried twice through high-tech fertility. And you said, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Islamic culture. Well, here's what I'm talking about. I was once we had a meeting with a Shiite Grand Ayatollah. They supposedly don't meet Westerners because we are religiously unclean if you're not a Muslim, from a Shiite point of view. But this guy did not know he was about to meet me, and he was brought by a Shiite. It was funny, I had come back from where I was to a meeting. This is somewhat east of here, let's say, and it's about 10 years ago. It's right before Shabbat. Now, I keep Shabbat, which means I wouldn't be traveling. So I get back to where I'm staying, and this Shiite friend of me said, hey, Harold, you want to come with me? I'm going to see Grand Ayatollah X. I said, Salem, I can. I said, right before Shabbat. And he knows the rules of Shabbat. He said, if I take you? I said, that's another story. You can open the doors and close the doors. I can't do anything like that. You're not Jewish, so it doesn't matter. And he knows because this guy knew me extremely well from both England and the United States. And so off we went to the Ayatollah. And frankly, I had a religious decision since we were in a war. I guess that tells you more or less where I was. For pikuach nefesh, to save a soul, I was told that I must do things to help. Well, here's the story. We go to this Shiite Grand Ayatollah. He can't know. I'm a last-minute addition. He couldn't have prepared for this meeting. And he says, we sit down. Now, in the Middle East, they smell who you are right away. Are you Shiite? Are you Sunni? What's your family mean? What's your this? Who's your father? And they know right away. This is how they deal with it. That, well, you now know I have a wife because I said I had one. But you wouldn't know this necessarily at a meeting with people here if you're dealing in the West. So we sit down. And I asked him at one point, because we got a very deep intellectual thing. I gave him a thing. I said, I'm really interested in this concept of ijtihad, of how you think about things. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, and I'll give you my Jewish answer, because he knew right away I was a Jew. And he could not have prepared for this. There was no way of him knowing. And you'll see where I'm going with this. He eventually starts to spell Talmud to me by heart in Aramaic. And I don't know much Talmud, but this passage I do. It has to do from Baba Metzia on when does you describe a hava yu'ush, hava lo yu'ush. It's something you've given up on owning a. You've lost something. When is it no longer yours, or when is it still yours, and when does someone have to give it back? And it's a highly complicated argument. Anyway, I asked him about fertility. Now, we in Judaism have come up with answers on this already. What happens if a woman through IVF, a high-tech whatever treatment is, shall we say, they implant in her 8 fertilized eggs, and they all take? That means death. That means nobody can survive. The woman doesn't survive if you do nothing, because abortion is not allowed in Judaism. So what is the Jewish answer? And this becomes important for the Shiites here. The Jewish answer is the purpose of life, of pregnancy, is to produce more life, and that the woman and the children, whatever, should survive. So the Jewish answer is what technology we have today. What is the answer? How many eggs, how many fetuses can a woman carry where she and the fetuses will survive? Today's technology is 3, so the other 5 are called rodfim, they're pursuers, they are like killers, and you may kill them. So you have, shall we say, a reduction, it's called 5 abortions. That's the Jewish answer. If the technology changes, it's 4 or 5, then the number changes in Judaism. In other words, it's not the number 3 that matters. So I present this to the Shiite, the Grand Ayatollah. I wanted to see how they think about things. And the guy gets really excited. He says, this is how we would think about it. We really haven't addressed this. But we would do the same way. A fatwa, which is nothing more than a religious decision, dies with you, meaning that it becomes a guide. And that's how the Shiites think. But it isn't how the Sunnis think. I then had dealings with, it was an additional 4, a total of 5 Ayatollahs or Grand Ayatollahs, and they all gave me the same answer and could not have been prepared for this. I then went to the Sunnis, who are 86%, and the neighbors here are all Sunni. There are no Shiites except in Lebanon. And I asked, what's your answer? Now remember, the answer is only analogy. Abortion is unacceptable in Islam. And the answer is, for the Sunnis, if Allah didn't want the 8 eggs to take, they wouldn't have. And so there's nothing you can do. Then that's going back to an analogy of a situation which occurred before the 10th century. I said, but you're guaranteeing the death of potentially 9 people here. That's what Allah wanted. No thinking, only analogy. The Shiites are very much, we need to think this through. They, unfortunately, cannot think things through. Everything is from top down. You are told what to think and how to think. Questioning. This young man is sort of family to me sitting over here. If he asks me a question, and this is a public forum, why are you doing this? I won't say it. I will begin to put you down because you're embarrassing me because I don't know the answer. They cannot say, I do not know. I ask you, in all the dealings that Israel has with its neighbors, have the Palestinians ever done anything wrong? Do they ever admit to doing anything wrong? None of them do. You can't. Because if you admit you made a mistake, you are admitting failure. It brings aib in Arabic, which it's dishonor and personal shame. It's like you've lost your honor, so you cannot say, I don't know. Well, Arafat never made a mistake. Mahmoud Abbas never made a mistake. Have they? When have they admitted anything's wrong? It's always blame. There is no word in Arabic or no concept in Arabic. In Persian, there is the nascent beginnings of a concept in Turkish, but it really isn't there yet, of taking personal responsibility for anything. I'm responsible. It didn't work. I failed. In this country, if someone fails at a high-tech thing, it's a good thing. Why? You begin to say, what did I learn from this? And how do I how can I make it better? In fact, if you're going to be hired by a high-tech firm and you come from a failure, they want to know about what did you learn from the failure? And the other thing is that if they know you failed, they know you're going to really try harder to succeed. No one has ever failed in the Middle East. It's not possible. It's not allowed, because then, oh my God, you are mushpal. Your honor is humiliated. Thank you. It's very hard to translate these concepts from language to language. Let me ask you a question. Is there anybody in this room that doesn't use computers? Of course, no hand went up. No, I want to ask every one of you a basic question. Who invented the computer? Anybody have an idea? There's...
Probably Al Gore.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Al Gore. He invented the internet, so he needed the computers to do it. Yeah. Okay. Many years ago, I attended a lecture. I was in Jordan for a while. This is way before the treaty with Israel. I do not call it a peace treaty. You'll see why. None of these treaties are peace as we understand it in the West. I'll address the concept of peace shortly. And I asked friends of mine, I want to go to a computer class. They were teaching computers. I wanted to know how they teach computers. We walk into the class, we sit down. The professor comes in. The first thing was, and they used to be this way at Hebrew U when I studied many years ago for a year at Hebrew U, dictation sessions. The teacher speaks and you write every word. So they began to do this. He starts the following, the professor of computers. The Muslims invented the computer in the 13th century because Al-Biruni did this, that, and the other thing, and he said, da. Fine and dandy. Okay. In other words, they hoard technology. You don't care who invented the computer. You want to use the technology. Doesn't work that way in the Middle East, unfortunately. It's mine. I invented it. I made a terrible mistake in 1979. I was teaching beforehand at the University of Delaware in the United States, and one of my students lived in Amman, and I was there. I come into their house, and they make a big meal for me. I only, of course, met the men. My student was a man, or a guy, I guess, younger. And I'm ushered into the salon where you meet guests, all fancy and everything. On the desk it's not a cell phone, is a hand calculator. Now, this was a big thing back then. Not everybody had them, and they were expensive. And it was sitting on the table. Now, I had seen them, I actually would tell them, but I didn't really know how they worked. And today, the decimal point goes from place to place. You don't have to do anything. But there was a little button. You had to move the decimal. You had to push a button to move the decimal point. I made a terrible mistake. I asked, wow. Sitting, and where is that hand calculator? On the salon table that everybody should see. I have one. So I asked, how do you use it? And that was a terrible mistake, because I now insulted people but didn't know it. The father looks at the son, my student, and says, show him how it works. This guy didn't know. And everybody had to avoid shame. If you didn't know, dumb me, I should have never asked the question. And it became a faux pas because they were embarrassed. Their personal honor. So why did they have it there? Because they hoard technology, just like the computer teacher said. Al-Biruni invented the computer in the, I think, 13th century. No. For us, once we have a technological advance, how do we use it? I remember when Al Gore did invent the internet, businesses say, how are we going to make money off of it? Now, do we know who were the people who made that happen? But we know the internet is a source for making money galore today. It happened. Nobody knows these things. We use technology in the West. They hoard technology. There is no software, to my knowledge, or computer products which are invented in the Muslim world. Because it requires depths of thinking. It requires questioning. It requires questioning your boss. It requires questioning your teacher. You may not do that. We go on to something else. the individual versus the group. And this you even find today in highly educated Muslims here in this country, and certainly in other places in the Middle East. And frankly, my experiences, I lived in Turkey, I lived in Iran, Iraq, been here a lot. I used to be a guide as a teenager to what was then called the West Bank for Israelis, because I was always interested in the Islamic stuff. And my Ph.D. later was all about what is northern Israel, southern Lebanon under the Ottomans. Anyway, everything is what group you belong to. Remember I said before, they figure out who your ethnic, religious, who's your father, who's this. They don't relate to you as an individual. There is therefore no individual responsibility. And I'll use you, Tzvi, as a Mazel is your family name, right? Okay, let's say you and I, we really don't know each other, but we do.
My real name is Meisels.
Meisels. Ah, are you a Litvak?
No, from Poland.
Okay, no, because Meisels, whatever. Okay. Anyway, you are a part of the Meisels clan. I'm part of the Rhode clan, or Rhode originally. And we could be friends, but only to until a particular limit, only to a certain extent. Because your great-grandfather killed my great-grandfather, and it was never avenged. And to get you or your family, even though we're friends, we're out of balance. Now this word adala, there's an organization which they translate as justice. It comes from an interesting classical Arabic concept, which has to do with the camel. Pretty much everything starts with the camel with the Arabs. Adl is, a camel is going in the desert or walking. It has two bags on both sides. They have to be in balance. That's called adl in Arabic, because that's the way the camel can progress and all that. But if it's not mayl in Arabic, it's called this, out of balance. The camel can't do whatever. You and I are out of balance because your great-grandfather killed mine, and my family, the Rhode family, has never avenged this. We've tried, but we were weak. Which brings me, and so I've got to get you back. But the Meisels have always been stronger than the Rhodes, so I haven't been able to. But if you all remember, or anybody who's a bit older, Shaika Ophir, a comic here, he had a skit called the Arabic Teacher, and it's about Hamlet, the Shakespeare. He was a Muslim. Shakespeare Zubair is a nice, good Muslim name. Sheikh Zubair, Shakespeare. Anyway, at one point, he's going back and forth. There's explaining, who killed whom, and Hamlet's talking with his father, who's in heaven at the time. Haman realizes that there's a problem, that his uncle has killed his father so he could marry his mother, and he goes, "La starihat al-intiqam." I will not rest until I have intiqam, which is niqama, revenge. You and I are out of balance. You're nothing more than a soldier in the Meisels clan. I'm nothing more than a soldier in the Rhodes clan. You and I can't really be friends. I'm friends with people in my own clan, and there's all sorts of social relationships. The result is, how can you have peace? You cannot. Now let's look at the concept of peace and of compromise. And we'll start with the concept of land. How do you compromise, nice Western word, and how do you make peace? Peace in English and peace in Hebrew happen to have the same sort of meaning. Hebrew is a root language, meaning shin lamed mem, the word shalom comes from this, and it means from the idea of completeness. There is shalom, which means you and I hated each other. We shake hands, we put bygones be bygones. We don't forget necessarily, but we're now working together on the same goal. What does the word lishalem mean in Hebrew? To pay. What is payment? I'm buying something from you, Brian, over there. I didn't know you were a lefty. Um, uh, you're I'm buying something from you, and you hand over the thing I'm buying. I hand you the money. The action is complete. That's why the Hebrew word l'shalem, that's where it comes from originally in ancient times. We have completed the transaction. That is mine now. It's not yours. The money is yours. But the Arabic word for peace does not come from, for to pay, does not come from that root. Even though Arabic and Hebrew are basically variants of the same language. It's dafa in Arabic, dalid pe ain, which comes from the word to defend. I hand you over the money so you won't take it back in the future. But nothing is ever complete. Nothing is ever ended. In Islam, remember we had peace, shalom, and salam. What is salam? If you go back, and Tzvi was an ambassador in Egypt, the Egyptians never referred to this treaty or this agreement as salam. Salam means in Arabic, it sounds like shin lamed mem, sin lamed mem. Same root? Not exactly. What it means, salam, in Arabic, and the word Islam comes from the same word. Islam means submission. And salam is the joy that you get through submitting to Allah's wishes through His religion, which is Islam. So, Hai is a Jew, I'm a Jew. I couldn't say to you, Assalamu alaikum. Everybody thinks, oh, it sounds like Shalom Aleichem. And probably, again, I'm quoting Uncle Bernard here. Bernard Lewis. I'm sorry, it's internal, whatever. It probably comes from a Jewish source. But it doesn't mean Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. Now, if I say, okay, let's say, since Hai here is from Istanbul, but he is not a Muslim, but if I were to say let's say you are, for this example, a Muslim, and I would say to you as a Jew, Assalamu alaikum, you would never respond to me, that way. You would say, no, but what about to Muslims? And what is the Muslim response? They actually say that. This is interesting. This is new. I did not know that. Because the Arabic response is different. Assalamu ala man ittadal huda. He only salam unto he who follows the true path. And that's the way it is among Arabs. And no Muslim, self-respecting Muslim would say that unless they're trying to make a political point. Meaning that you can only have peace between Muslims. Although that isn't so true either, because what they do to each other is awful to their fellow Muslims. So what can you have with the Jews? You can have, and this is what the Egyptians originally wanted the word as sulh. Sulh is an Arabic root, which means I'm weak. I'm going back to my example you with Tzvi before. The roads are weak, the meisels are strong. And I will wait until I can I'm strong. And I'm going to get you back, Tzvi, for what your great-grandfather, who you didn't know, and my great-grandfather, who I didn't know, I got to get you back for that. Because we're out of balance. Now,
Salam is the same thing.
That's...
Salam and shalom, no, in Hebrew, salam and solach, after all, we in Israel try to
Yes.
tell people that salam is not the best, but solach is the best. Absolutely not.
Exactly.
They accept
Yes.
shalom, sulh, as long as you are the stronger.
Yes.
Once they
And what did Sadat say when he came back after signing at Camp David in Cairo, when he got off the plane? It was brilliant. And we don't want to hear it because we're Jews and we love... He said, I did what I did for Egypt. And what will happen in future generations is for future generations to decide. You see, not permanent. And the word used in Egyptian newspapers when they referred to the agreement with Israel is not either of those words. It's tafahum, which means mutual understanding. I understand you and you understand me. Well, what does that mean? It's not really clear. There are many really very sad things which is where the Muslim world is today. Can there be peace with Israel as we understand it? A cardinal principle in Islam is when, okay, the Hebrew word, the Hebrew root, p-t-h, is the idea of opening. I am opening the door. Arabic, fatah, also has that meaning, but it has another meaning, which is much more important. It means Islamic conquest. Futuh is the verbal noun in Arabic, futuhat the plural, and it means I conquered this land for Islam, I've opened it up for Islam, it can never leave Islam. It's Islam forever. So all these nice Israelis who negotiate with themselves and want to believe that, for example, we can do this and we can do that and we can give them this and that. Please understand that Efrat is as much a settlement as Tel Aviv is a settlement. There is no difference. This land was conquered in 637 by Islam, and it is therefore Muslim forever. Here's the proof. Well, we all have some emotional attachment maybe to this one, but let's take Spain. Spain was Muslim from 712 to 1492. If I'm correct, I calculated this before this talk, that's 524 years ago. You put in Andalus in Arabic, which is the word for southern Spain, into the internet, and you look at the discussions of how they are going to get back what is theirs. Discussions personally with tons of people from North Africa who don't want to discuss Spain with me. Why? Because we were from there. As they say in Arabic, means zaman, from a long, long time ago. But you never give up. Spain belongs to Islam because it was conquered by Islam. Southeastern Europe, same. All the Ottomans, Ataturk in Turkey, who founded modern secular Republic of Turkey, gave up on it, but not Erdogan. He talks about the Ottoman bölge, area of influence, whatever like this. This is Muslim. It will remain Muslim forever. How do you compromise with this? I will get to something nice in the end here. I just thought of it. Book publishing in the Middle East. If you go to a book fair or go into any bookstore, with the exception of Baghdad, and that's from personal experience, the books are about Islam, hatred of the West, and definitely hatred of Israel. There's nothing else. The Arab world publishes fewer books than Finland does each year. I use Finland. Who knows Finnish? Anders, maybe you do. I mean, you're close, but not enough. Of course. Oh. You're from?
I'm ambassador of Lithuania.
Oh. Well.
What country did you say?
Lita.
You know Finnish? Estonian Finnish, the same, basically?
They're very close. 97%.
Well, imagine Finland has how many people? 3, 4, 5, whatever, less than 10 million, whatever it is, right?
5.5.
Okay, 5.5. How many people are in the Arab world?
320 million.
We're talking hundreds of millions.
300.
Whatever it is, whatever an Arab is, I don't know the definition of an Arab, because they don't.
No,
They fight on that.
Arab League countries.
Oh, okay. Translation of science texts and all that? Nah. No. They are mired in the past. The real revolutionary force, if there is one in the Muslim world, is the women. Because fundamental Islam, radical Islam, wants to put them back in Germany. I think that was it barefoot and pregnant or something like that. I don't know, but it's you know the phrase. That's where they belong. I want to tell you, we have an apartment here in Natsif here in Jerusalem, and I used to get very mad because the amount of learner drivers, cars that are, and that it was huge. And then I said to myself, I began to look, who's learning the drive? First of all, most of the names of the car companies are Arab. And most of the people learning to drive are women. And I said, you know what? All you need to do is educate the women. It doesn't matter in what. If they're outside of the house, I'm a somebody. This is where the real revolution is going. And why should they be inferior? And the truth is that if they wish to reinterpret their sources, now we Jews have had to do that 2,300 years ago when we lost sovereignty. We found ways of getting along when we didn't control our destiny. Christianity had a reformation. Forced to, because it was killing everybody. They were killing, with the last one out in Europe, please turn out the lights, or blow out the fire at the time, I guess. Islam needs this desperately. It's the only way to unleash their creative abilities. And again, as I went back with the DNA in the beginning, they are capable. How do we know they're capable? Again, DNA-wise, just go to the Hadassah studies. By the way, it's all on the net. Go to YouTube. There are videos. Put this in, and you will see Hadassah studies. You will see Jews with great ideas going out into the area around Hebron and telling to people, we're one people. Why is this the case? I can only tell you that it's my opinion after, again, studying this, how many, for 52 years or something like that, Islam, that when this revolution comes, and you can say, well, how do we know that? We don't know the future. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know the following. If I hit this guy here, Dan, I hit this guy, why do I do it? I mean, like your first reaction, what the hell's going on here?
Not if you hit me, I understand.
Well, you're not Dan and I'm not Harold, okay? He didn't react. He's weak. This is Hitler, by the way, versus the West. I'm sorry, I'll apologize up front. I hit him again, because he didn't react the second time. But what is going on in Dan's the West and I'm the Islamic world? Dan's getting mad, or this guy is getting mad. Why? Why am I doing this? There is going to come a point where your response is, the hell with you, and you're going to beat me up. And I am going to be in much worse shape than you are. You're younger than I am, and you work out and I do not. So I'm lost. I'm toast. This is what the Muslim world is doing everywhere. That's what the Nazis did to Europe. Hitler said to his generals, we're going to march into the Saarland, the area which was neutralized. It's next to the Benelux countries. And the German general said, no, the West is going to do X, Y, and Z. They're going to stop it. Hitler marched in. He showed the generals were wrong. That's when the generals swear to Hitler, right after that. Loyalty. And in German, that's it. This went on for another few years. And everything, the West just retreated and retreated, just like Dan, who didn't do a damn thing to me right now. And then, all of a sudden, the march into Poland, they march into Poland, and then you had the phony war for a few years. And then the Japanese did a favor to the world. They attacked Pearl Harbor. And the Americans didn't give, don't want, anybody else's war, don't want to be involved and all that. I remember my father was 23 in 1941. I wasn't alive. Telling me later, no one gave a damn, no one wanted, that was it. And then Hitler did America the favor, did us the favor as well, the Western world, of declaring war a few days later, siding with his ally, and that was that. And it took a little bit of time, and that was the end. I wouldn't be surprised if I've just described, and again, it's the future, so we can't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we are vis-a-vis the Muslim world. I can tell you the Chinese are that way. I can tell you that Putin is that way. Putin says to a lot of people who talk with him that they understand he is in an existential war with radical Islam. Putin has a massive movement of trying to get people to convert Sunnis. I thought that 1/3 of Moscow, which is really Russia, was legally and illegally resident Muslim. I am wrong. From someone who was there who knows this stuff, no, it's 40%. Putin needs the Muslims to fight each other. There is a massive attempt to make them convert to Shiism, because almost all former Soviet Muslims, with the exception of a little area of Azerbaijan, what was former Soviet Azerbaijan, and in the Pamir Mountains, which is out in Tajikistan and out in the east, everybody else is Sunni. So the answer is to get them to convert to Shiism so they can worry about each other. They understand they're in an existential war with Islam. The Chinese understand that 22% of their country is Xinjiang, which was Turkic. They are people, that area is closer to Jerusalem than it is to Beijing, physically. And those people, this was a Muslim area, conquered by the Chinese. But it was at first Muslim. It was conquered by Islam. So who does it belong to? It belongs to Islam. Good luck, Chinese. Chinese don't have the fear and the whatever that the Israelis do of, oh my God, what are we going to, if we do this, what are they going to say? And the Americans, who are, it seems like the present administration at least is embarrassed, for existing. Anything America does by nature is bad. So we got to stop it. And Europe is, finding excuses for all these things. But the rest of the world isn't. And the rest of the world is making more and more trouble for, the Islamic world is making more and more trouble for the non-Muslim world. Is that day going to come? Is the Pearl Harbor going to come? If it does, and we can't know the future, if that day comes, there are a lot of Muslims in the Muslim world who understand exactly what the problem is. There are people here, another Muslim, Arab, Israeli. I am not a Palestinian. It's Khalid. They try to do all sorts of things because they understand what the story is, what reality is. But if they have to watch when they open their mouths, because they could be declared a non-Muslim by Muslims. And the penalty for leaving Islam without a trial is death. But they exist, these people. And the only way they could ever open up their mouths and reform their own religion and reform their own culture is if their enemies are defeated. Who are their enemies? It's not Israel, it's not America, it's not the West, it's not China, it's not Russia. Their enemies are the Muslims, the radical Muslims who have sway basically throughout the entire Muslim world today. Will that happen? Allah knows, and she's not talking, at least not to me. I don't know. But there are people, and there are ways to reinterpret the Quran. I can help them. I used to know a lot of Quran by heart, but I know enough now. You're older, you don't use these things the way you used to. But it's doable. There are two, for example, sections of the Quran, and for this I will end. One section is the Meccan period, where Muhammad was weak. And he has phrases in the Quran, I have my religion, or deen, whatever deen is, law or religion, and you have yours. In other words, let's get along. Muhammad made treaties with his people, with his enemies at the time, from his own tribe, the Quraysh. He made a 10-year treaty, he was strong after 2 years, and so that's when Hudaybiyah. And that is, that's the temporary treatment, and once you can regroup and strong, then you push. But he was still basically weak. When he goes to Mecca, the second period, he goes and he creates a state. And he is strong. And the Sharia scholars that come up afterwards say that the second period abrogates the first period. In other words, let's get a long period with the second period. Well, if you accept that only the Quran is what matters, and all of the Quran is equal, then you have phrases and things that you can use to say, hey, we gotta get along, buddy, with the world. And Muslims, a lot of Muslims know this, but they can't open their mouths because they want to live. You can understand that. What will happen in the future? We'll see. Thank you.
Can I add something if it's possible?
No. Hi, please.
Hi, I'm from Tel Aviv University, Shiite and Sunni, originally from Turkey. I would like to add another Quranic verse. I guess you may be familiar. Surah Al-Ma'idah.
The table,
If
yeah.
I'm not mistaken, it's number 35. It's saying that the that Muslim is also a Christian or a Jew. So, I mean, it's also problematic because, as you mentioned, there are some verses. There are very friendly verses in Quran. Let me tell you, I was born in Turkey at the age of 22. I moved to Israel, and I attended as an observant in the religion knowledge classes during my primary school studies. And there, the Turkish government...
Muslim studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the...
And there, the Turkish government showed the students that the verse you mentioned, that your religion is to you and my religion is to mine, so Chai is our friend and we should respect to his religion. But they are not teaching Maida. But now, if you're going to Turkish social media, you can basically see Maida everywhere. If you are going
And
to...
repeat what it is in Maida.
Maida 35, if I'm not mistaken, is considering a Muslim who is having a very good relations with a Jew or with a Christian, and it is tagging them as Christians or Jews, and not basically they exclude them from Islam. And this is very problematic because I can tell you that from I'm visiting Turkey like just 2 days ago. I was there, and I saw an electronic billboard next to a mosque. You know, if you're just going in the street and you can read the Quranic verses for the good of the public, and I saw that Maida there, that Maida 35, and it's in, I mean, translation in Turkish, and it's God's words, and also what you said is God's words. So let us decide what we should believe in. Thank you very much.
We'll have some comments and questions from friends. Ambassador Mazel.
When we opened our embassy in Cairo in 1980, I was among the team, and we started arriving to Cairo. We didn't know anyone, and then we started to speak to people, to meet people. Not everyone wanted to speak to us, but then came Ambassador Moshe Sasson. Moshe Sasson, his mother tongue is Arabic. He was born in Damascus, but he was raised in Israel. Anyway, so for him to be in an Islamic country as ambassador was really a kind of a challenge, and he pushed into the society as far as it was possible. And I remember very well that he was 100% in Arabic, and he used to ask the Egyptian, the few intellectuals, used to speak to us, why did the industrialization of the world stopped at the gates of Islamic world? No industrialization, no development, no economic development in the Islamic world, not only Arab countries, all the Islamic world. So the answer was by everyone, Muslim, Egyptian, intellectual, born, raised in Egypt. First reason is Islam. You said it. Second reason, you didn't mention it, it's very important. Arab feudalism. Arab are not a people, they are tribes, till now. Now they use less the word tribes, Kabail, but Ashair, large Hamula, okay? But Arabs have never been a people, and they are connected to the chief, to the head of the Shevet, or the head of the Hamula, or whatever. And they cannot think independently. And this is independent from Islam. It was even before Islam. And the third reason, they used to say to us, Israel, because we divide the Arabs. But this was, just to say it. But Islam and Arab traditions, that's the problem. This is one thing. Second thing, and I'd like to relate to what you said about Mazel Roder. What's your name? Real name? Roder?
Rode.
Roder.
It's the Yiddish female name Rhoda.
And Ben Rhodes is your friend?
Well, I think...
You know him.
No, that's with an S.
Okay.
Part of my family is, but wait a minute. I don't. I have a question whether he's part Jewish. I don't know.
Probably he's Jewish, but he should be because he's so intelligent. Okay. Anyway, listen, I'm going to tell you a story related to this issue. I have a neighbor in my house, and we are together in the VAD. So we speak a lot, and he told me, listen, he is now retired. He had a tanning workshop of leather, tanning, you say, right? He employed about 12 people, all of them Arabs, from around Jerusalem. The best man was also Arab. He worked with him about 12 years. His salary was wonderful. Yes, he married during a period. He built his own house around Jerusalem. He had 4 or 5 children. Some of them married or later, whatever. Anyway, and my friend was invited to all their simchas. At a certain time, he came to him, the Arab, and he told me, listen, you made me a man. Listen, I'm prosperous. Look what I did through my work in your place and all the money. But once I will be given the order, I'll kill you. You understand? Now, who's going to give him the order? Allah, Islam, Daesh, Abu Mazen, but he's ready to kill you. And he was a real friend all his life. And you gave him everything. So we have got a problem of civilization. You never said a problem of civilization, but this is the only conclusion from what you said. Yes?
You're right.
When I try to say in so many words, listen to the journalist on Reshet Echad or Reshet Bet or whatever. Yes, we have a problem of civilization. You should understand and deal it like that. They say, oh, stop, this is racism.
It's unfortunately a problem. Yeah.
I believe it's 51. Okay. Maida 51.
Harold, yeah. We're gonna go around the room and get everyone. May I just ask one question about America in the mind of Islam, the United States? It seems that in recent times there is a growing stress point in view of the radical Islamic terror attack in San Bernardino and in other places, and that America still, as one pundit put it, is still a very tolerant society. We haven't seen a counter jihad in the United States, mass demonstrations, no mass violence. And when we look historically, we look at Saib Qutb, for example, spent a year and a half or 2 years teaching in the United States and came back with greater hate for the United States than when he left. And there are other leaders of Islam that spent a long time in the United States. Can you help us? How do we think about that? Are we looking in the United States at a point where there's going to be an explosion against the 3.5 million Muslims living in the United States?
Well, 2 points. First of all, you mentioned Sayyid Qutb, who is the intellectual godfather of modern, let's say, fundamentalist, radical Islam, whatever. America has a corrective. It's called elections. And in the elections, there's no doubt that Americans are sick and tired. And if you listen to the talk shows in the United States, you used to hear the problem was Islamic fundamentalism. And when people said things like the problem is Islam, oh, that was unacceptable because you can't talk, quote, about a religion. But if you listen to the talk shows today, you'll hear people say the problem is Islam. Now, the question they have to come up with then is there a form of Islam which is compatible with living in the Western world? And that requires, again, a thought revolution. I would only say that some of the candidates for President of the United States understand that there is a problem. And I would say that some of the support that they have comes from people who understand we need to save America, the values of the founding fathers of the United States, which are the values of Mount Sinai, which is why the American people feel such a strong bond with Israel. I don't know where this is going to go, but I can tell you from personal experience that the Wahhabis, the Saudis and their friends, own, if you wish, about 90% of the mosques in the United States. The moment that you call it religion, you can't fight religion. You can't, America, all religion is separate from state. But if you say you're dealing with a culture of violence, a culture which does not so nice thing to its women, then maybe things could be done. But there is something brewing under the surface in the United States. America is not a country of mass rallies or mass demonstrations, except for if you're teenagers and high testosterone and whatever like that in the Vietnam War. I mean, otherwise you don't get such things. The political system, as a rule, has a cleansing effect. Will this happen in 2016? The question is, if the person who becomes president is not one who is willing to love America, address the, shall we say, help America go back to the values of its founding fathers, strengthen the military and things like this, I'm not sure that America can make it. You know, to destroy this building will take 10 seconds, and how long would it take to rebuild it? And that's where America is right now with its military and a few other things. So we'll see, Dan. We're not prophets.
Please, Howard. We'll come to Sammy. Yeah.
Harold, thank you very much for the presentation. Two questions. One,
You're also Harold.
Howard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Howard.
There's so few of us, that's why I'm saying.
Two questions. Quick questions. One, to what extent does your presentation, your thinking, compare with that of Sam Huntington and the Clash of Civilizations? You alluded to it, but hey.
Look, I watched the debate between Bernard Lewis and, more of a discussion, a public discussion between Bernard Lewis and Sam Huntington. Given Islam where it is today, we have a clash of civilizations. In the end, I want to compare this to the War of the 1812 Overture of Tchaikovsky. If you listen to it, and again, most music is based on events, history, and things like this. This is a battle between Napoleon and Russia, Tsarist Russia, and most of the song, most of the overture is dun 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 dun, meaning French is advancing. But it isn't how things end. It ends with Russia destroying Napoleon's army. And that is the clash of the civilizations. It appears we are France right now of the 1812 overture. Retreat, retreat, retreat. But in the end, the Muslim world is technologically, militarily zero match for the West. And is the Muslim world doing what the Japanese general who led the attack on Pearl Harbor said? No, he had spent high school in the United States. He was the son of a diplomat. He violently, strongly, passionately opposed the attack on Pearl Harbor, which he led, but that was the decision, so he did it. And here's why. He said, we could do this. We have the capacity of producing 80 tons of steel a year. America can produce now 800,000 tons. And it can change a lot of it and it's much more powerful. We can do much more than that. For about 6 months, we can have fun. But eventually, we're going to be killed. It's over. That's the story of where the Muslim world is right now. If they do not have a reform, they are in danger of a Pearl Harbor, of creating a Pearl Harbor, and God help them. It is a clash of civilizations the way it is today.
The follow-up, the next question, unrelated, is why, and you kind of alluded to this too, why do not the Washington intellectuals, think tanks, advisors, why don't they get it? Why don't they understand?
Do you want a cynical answer or a real answer? No. Maybe they're the same. Washington, again, I've been living there since 1982, so that gives you, it's a long time. So much of government works this way. I want to worry about my position. I have this set of principles. This is what, let's call it the State Department, and I know it's in general, but there are some good people there. I have this set of principles. And if you don't like these, I got another set of principles. It's not that they don't know. It's not that they can't know. I'll try to avoid a name here. One of the things, in fact, here it was published. I wrote in my last years in government a study on how Iranians negotiate. I lived in Iran, was there for the early and mid stages of the revolution, and I learned a lot living with Iranians and going to university with them and all that. Again, our goal was to learn mentality. And one who, in the early years of the Obama administration, was appointed to, let's say, we couldn't have an ambassador to Iran because we didn't have diplomatic relations. But his job was, in essence, to deal with the Iranian issue for Obama.
You know who it is, right?
But guys, I'm not mentioning the name. You can call him anything you want. Now, I was at a dinner with him, sitting right next to him, and I said, hey, because it was a dinner, in fact, it was, again, the Obama administration had started, and Cheney was Vice President Cheney was one of the greatest people that I ever worked for in my life. I mean, I know that he goes around and shoots people and does all sorts of awful things, but it's not real. I mean, he's a first-class mensch, a first-class human being. Cheney asks this guy, so what are you going to do? He says, well, he explains that I'm going to be working on Iran and et cetera, et cetera. Now, the guy knows me, and he knows that guy who we're talking about, knows me, and he knows that our politics in the world and our view of the world is very, very different. So I said, X, I have written a study on how Iranians negotiate. This is an earlier version of what you guys eventually published. I said, would you be interested since you're going to deal with it? I said, I want you to know beforehand it's completely stories. There's no politics in it. It's how they acted in certain situations. To which he said, sure, I'd love it. I said, okay, how do I get it to you? He said, come to the transition team office, bring a copy of it, and, look them out. Whatever, and I'll get it. Next morning I go there, I wrap it. It's not classified, but I wrap it because government is, I wrap it. The woman who comes out had been a secretary of mine. I was once seconded to the State Department from sometime in 87 to 88 for a short period of time. Again, to deal with Islamic mentality, which is really what I deal with. She comes out, we give each other a big hug, we talk and all that. I said, would you do me a favor? I said, put this on X's desk. I said, would you call me and tell me what he does with this? Remember, it's not a political study. And she goes like this. In America, that's like, fun. And she says, about an hour, she goes, takes the things, puts it on his desk. She calls me in about an hour. Harold, I guess I should use this in nice, formal American English.
Yeah, no accent.
No accent, because her accent was clear. She said, I put this on X's desk, right in the center, in the middle. He wasn't there. I came back, about 45 minutes. I saw that in the burn bag, unopened, because it was all sealed and everything. It's not that the American government can't know. It doesn't want to know. I'll just give you another Iranian thing. Obama. I pronounce the name in a particular way. Anybody who knows Persian here, O means him, he. Ba means with. Ma means us. Obama, during the first campaign, the Iranian regime told his people, don't even try to revolt, because he is with us, the regime. And that's how they revolt, when they believe they can get away with things. That's the Middle East. Obama becomes president he takes the oath of office on January 21st. On March the 21st is Iranian New Year's, the first day of spring. Well, President Obama does what Shimon Peres did as prime minister, as president here, and American presidents did is here, which is always send greetings to the Iranian people on this great day of, and it's a political statement by culture. All you do is saying Happy New Year. But the first time Obama, what did he say? He says, congratulates the Iranian people. You can see this on YouTube. And he also brings greetings to the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That had never been said before by any American president. That means I recognize you. And he proved to the Iranian people what the Iranian government said. Now the result of all that is this wonderful agreement.
I promised we would get you out
Yeah,
before
because
6 this evening. So if there's not
Just maybe
if there's
one more,
is
because
there
we're gonna
burning
try-
is there another burning issue? Yeah, please.
But to continue, you said some years ago that Ba'uma meant we with him.
Ba'uma, with us.
Yeah. Could you give the answer? Was he with them or not?
Look, I'm not a friend of Obama's. I have never met him personally. The only answer I have, I will quote Michael Oren's book, Ally, and shall we say Michael Oren is not known to be one of the most strident of people. And he talks about the book Dreams from My Father that Obama wrote. Now, it's an interesting book, and this is in the same story, how come all these Washington intellectuals don't know? Obama didn't know his father. He was Obama's father was in Obama's life for 2 years, age 1 and 2, and he saw him once again when he was 10 for a short period. So whose dreams were they? Because he didn't know his father. This book is an anti-American book. There's not one nice word. I'm quoting Michael Oren in his book. Not one nice word about America. Anybody who is an enemy of America is because America did X, Y, and Z to them. The heroes were Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Saudi Arabia may be the guardian of the two holy places, I think is the appropriate English. But Saudi Arabia is on the American side, right? What about Iran? Iran's one of the countries that book praises. You make your own conclusions.
That's one, Sammy, and then we'll
Please,
close
yeah.
the formal roundtable.
You made a very clear distinction between the Shiite and the Sunni way of thinking. Maybe you call it culture. How did this distinction actually
arise?
How was it created?
Remember, since no conflict can be solved, the Sunni Shiite problem starts with the death of Muhammad, and the question is who inherits the mantle of Islam? Is it the Sunni establishment of Mecca or the family? The word Shia is the Hebrew word Si'a with the samikh, meaning faction or group around the family. Since it can never be solved, that's the way it is. But the gates of independent reasoning were not closed by the Shiites, and they expect their religious establishment to think. And that goes back to the 10th century. I would add the following, again from personal experience, and with all that's going on in Syria right now, and this awful, awful government in Iran, I would only argue that whatever government comes in place of this one, if there were a change in regime in Iran, would be a Shiite government. The Shah was Shiite. His wife was devout. We all have one thing in common, all the non-Muslims and the Shiites. We all swim in a Sunni sea. And to go back, maybe just to answer one more thing, that a son of a very important Grand Ayatollah in Iraq came to see me in Washington, came to see whatever. And he knew that I had some knowledge of Shiism. And we began to talk. And all he wanted to do in the end was figure out a way of how to have a relationship with here. Why here? Why Israel? Shiites have not been good to Jews throughout history. Nobody has. It's very simple. America gets upset and runs and flees. Israel isn't fleeing. Israel stands up. Israel protects itself. Israel ain't gone nowhere. Israel is a potential ally to a normal Shiite regime, one which is prepared to get along with the world, whatever its leadership would be in Iran. And I only want to tell you, I'll give you one thing from that little Iranian book. I was in a demonstration, and they're all yelling, "We don't want Shah." And Andres, you said, I think before, there are no articles in Latvian. Persian does not have the word the. So when we say we don't want Shah, you don't know whether it's the Shah that's in power or any Shah. The secret police starts coming and beating up a few heads, and the Shah, in the middle of the sentence, it all of a sudden changes to, we don't want Shah. Why should we want a Shah? We have one already. We don't need another. My point is, Iranians can switch on a dime if they believe the outside world will support them. They knew that the Shah was not being supported by the Shah of the world. His name was Jimmy Carter, the president at the time. Will this happen again? That is the history of Iran. That's how Iran became Shiite in the 1500s. The leadership does, the people basically go on. Power. They're looking, a lot of the Shiite religious authorities, and I again will not name names because I can only get them killed, they've said that there are two holy cities. For the Shiites, Mecca and Medina are, if they would be destroyed, are like a paperclip. But Najaf and Karbala in Iraq are the Vatican of Shiism. And that would be decapitation, not my words, their words. These people are petrified of the Sunnis, who from their perspective have constantly oppressed the Shiites throughout history. Who will be with them? Who is strong? The Alawis in Syria, the Christians. And from the exact Arabic words, because I will never forget, and the guy says to me, ممكن, perhaps, في مستقبل بعيد, maybe in the distant future, Israel, which I don't think I need to translate. We'll see. Allah knows.
Thank you, Harold Rhode. Please join me in thanking Dr. Harold Rhode for this terrific roundtable.